Welcome to it's a combined Seneca County Industrial Development Agency, Economic Development Corporation, and Seneca County Funding Corp audit committees. So we'll start out with the IDA being first. So first order of business is approval of the audit committee meeting minutes from September of 2020. If there's no corrections or adjustments, can I have a motion to approve?
So made. I read them.
Yeah. Trina, Menzo, and Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
So next order of business is a presentation presentation of the IDA audit and management letter.
Well, good morning. Thanks for inviting us here today, and happy St. Patrick's Day. As you know, we're here to review the draft of the financial statements and internal control communication relating to the Seneca County Industrial Development Agency. I'm here with my colleague, John Rankowitz. As you know, John has been involved in the audit for the past few years and really was the lead on the job this year. And we're going to walk through a financial executive summary that's just going to highlight some of the key financial information that's included in the financial statements. Certainly, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and we'll try and react to those. There are a few pending items in the report relating to the project information. And I know Kelly's going to be getting us that information this afternoon, and then we'll be stopping out tomorrow to finish up that piece of the work. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, and he's going to share a screen and really walk through some of the key financial highlights.
Hey, good morning, or good afternoon. So as I mentioned, I'm going to walk you through what a little summary we put together. It's a financial executive summary. So rather than go through the entire report, which includes a lot of footnotes and extra information, this executive summary helps us kind of focus in on the statements themselves and really identify at a higher level some of the major activity that happened during the year. Just to talk a little bit about the audit this year. Everything went very well, and Kelly and Pat always do a very good job of meeting our requests, getting things ready for us, and providing them. Your bookkeeper Ellie does a great job of getting reports to us, so everything went very smoothly this year. Which this is a very unusual year. With COVID and people working remotely, we were able to actually be on site and get things, and so everything went very well. And especially this year, we're very, very pleased how the audit went this year. And as Tom mentioned, for the IDA, we have a variety of reports that we actually issue. The financial statements, which get a auditor's opinion on that, and it's an unqualified opinion or a clean opinion, which means that the numbers are materially stated and then can be relied upon. We also issue, as part of our report, under the governmental auditing standards, which you're required to report under, an opinion on your internal controls, and that opinion is also in the report, and it is identifies that there's no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in your controls. So that's a clean opinion as well, which is very good, which is what you want to see. We also, at the very end of the financial statements, there's the investment report, which is a required report by the ABO, requires you to report on your investing. And it's just an opinion on whether or not you're following your own investment policies, and that report indicates that there were no exceptions there. Okay, so the executive summary for the IDA. We'll roll right over to page 1. So the statement of net position, and this is a combined statement. So we actually break out in the report two different funds for the agency, your operating fund and then your revolving loan program. Those funds, this is the combined statement, which shows all that activity year to year. And just kind of gives you the total overall view of the agency. I'm going to move past this and go right into the individual funds so that we can see the activity that's really happening there. Okay, so this is your operating fund, and you have comparative balances. This is your balance sheet statement of net position. So you can have comparative balances, so you can kind of see where you were last year and where you are this year in the activity. Up at the top, your assets, so your cash and your receivables, and just some things to note there. That accounts receivable is really related to your state grant. You have a grant for $600,000 that was awarded last year. It's to help with your marketing strategic plan and website development, and actually gave you funds going back to 2015, and a majority of that was received last year. But you still have a receivable outstanding for some of the costs you've incurred that you expect to be reimbursed by that grant. So those balances are displayed up here. The industrial park, so this is the Deer Run property. And you can see that went down this year, and that's related to the sale of lots 3, 4, and 5, which closed very early in the year for $85,000. So you see the decrease in those investments. Okay. Moving down into the liability section, so those unpaid liabilities at year end, you do have to note the deferred revenue. This is the sale of the Hillside property. Okay, so you know that agreement, you entered into that in September to sell the property. However, the purchaser is exercised the option to rent that property for a period going into next year. So they made the payment for the property up front. So the IDA is actually deferring that revenue until the sale closes, which is expected to be next year. Okay. Towards the bottom, the net position, so your bottom line, your equity, you can see overall down 80,000, 81,000. However, the areas here, your restricted piece, the investment in the industrial park, again, that's down because you sold some of that property. But over the unrestricted piece, so those amounts that aren't designated for specific use, actually increased $61,000. Okay, and if we go to the next page, we can kind of see what makes up that change from year to year. So this next page, this is the changes in net position. This is your income statement for the operating fund. And again, present these comparative balances so you can see what you had last year compared to this year. Items of note, your agency fees are up quite a bit. So you had some good activity this year, completed a number of projects, closed a number of projects. So collected some additional fees this year, very positive, especially in, like I mentioned, with this, the COVID and the uncertainty there, it's very, very good to see this additional fees and projects being completed. Moving into your operating expenses, we see a decrease in contractual expenses, and a lot of that is related to last year. A majority of your work done on that website development and your marketing strategic plan was done last year. You did have some expense this year, but that's why you see a decrease there. Personnel services just related to the turnover in the executive director position. Mostly. Grant income, again, is that $600,000 grant. So a majority of it was recorded last year because you were able to claim expenses even going all the way back to 2015. So a majority of that grant was earned or drawn down last year. This year, you still did have $70,000 worth of expenses that are expected to be recovered. Okay. Site development is related to the Hillside project. So some development going on out there for future project. Last year, land allocation and the fair value adjustment. So these two items, just to remind you, last year you transferred that Lamb Road property, which was just in satisfaction of a project that was completed. So that came off your books, which resulted in that decrease. And then the adjustment to the industrial park. So again, the Deer Run property, because you had a sale pending, you reevaluated the value you had in the property and recorded a loss last year, writing down the value in that property down to what you thought based on the sales price, what the remaining amount was. And then, so you're changing that position $81,000. Okay. So that's the operating fund. Any questions on this fund and the activity you had for the year?
I'd just like to ask one question. In the audit review, were there any significant adjustments made during the audit?
No material audit adjustments were required.
Thank you.
Yep.
The 85,000 sale of those 3 lots did not enter into our income then?
No, because it's basically a 1-for-1. The price received was the value you had in the lot. So
okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so moving on. So the other fund that you have in the agency is the revolving loans. So this is monies we received from a federal grant program from the Department of Commerce to establish this revolving loan fund. So you issue loans to certain companies. And then make collections on that. This page will have up at the top is your balance sheet, again, your statement of net position with those comparative balances. Right now, the activity is pretty consistent year to year. You have 3 loans outstanding. Everyone happens to be current in their payments. Okay, so the real activity this year for the loan fund is really just the repayments being made. And if we go down to the bottom, we can see that. So your federal program income, $14,000, that's the interest you're earning on the repayment of a revolving loan. So those funds are available to pay your administrative costs for the revolving loan project and also to issue new loans. Contractual expenses, this is really limited to your audit fees and some of the bookkeeping costs. And so you can see the overall change is an increase of $10,800 to your bottom line, to your unrestricted net position. Okay. Any questions on the revolving loan fund? So other thing to go through is, as far as the loan fund goes, is we also completed a what's referred to as a single audit. So another report related to the agency. The single audit is required because of the amount of dollars you have of federal money tied up with the revolving loan fund. So we do a specific audit to review your compliance with your federal loan project. So there's a number of compliance requirements that the Department of Commerce requires you to follow. Right now, most of that's just related to reporting the activity in the loan fund. So we completed this additional audit of those funds over compliance and issued our opinion, which says that we had no exceptions to compliance, that you are following the compliance requirements of the that the federal department is requiring you to do, and no exceptions noted, no question costs. Okay, and then we also have a management letter, communication, internal control related matters. So just some recommendations, but actually this year and last year we didn't have any findings related to your internal control. Again, when I mentioned we had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that we had noted as a result of our audit, because we look at your internal controls and do some testing there. We had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, and didn't have any recommendations this year. So very positive. Again, considering the year and the difficulties that can be had working remotely or trying to keep people separate, that's very positive to see that we were able to see the internal controls still functioning as designed. So those are the reports I have for the agency. Any additional questions on the financial statements, single audit, or the management letter?
So, John, I think, as you said, there's just a little bit of additional information that you need to finish these up.
Yes. So you're required to, as part of your financial statements, include a section that includes all your current projects. And so Kelly is working on that schedule. Again, we're anticipating seeing that today, and we'll do the testing tomorrow to verify the information, and then that will be added to the back of the report.
Okay.
And those will be included in the packet you get for the IDA meeting.
Yeah. So everything will be set for the packet that'll be sent out either late this week, early next week for next Thursday's meeting.
Correct.
The project sheets that are going to be audited tomorrow might not go out until the briefing memo.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Okay. But certainly everyone will have a chance to review all the information prior to next Thursday's meeting.
Yes.
Has a representation letter been executed?
Okay.
Yeah. I don't
does
think
anyone... Go ahead.
I don't think that's been sent out yet, but I can check on that.
Okay.
Because we haven't dated the report yet, because we're still waiting on some information. So once we finish the information, the dating of the report would then take place, and we'll send the rep letter out.
All right. That's what I thought.
So what we have here, we have two items to recommend for approval of the audit and management letter and of the single audit. I mean, obviously they're both not completed. So, but I think we can go ahead and, based on the information we know, at least at this point, tentatively approve that, and that'll be presented to the entire board next Thursday, the 25th.
Yep.
So then, if there's no other questions, then can I have a motion? We'll do the first, the recommendation of approval to the board of the IDA audit and management letter.
I'd make that motion. Smenzo.
and second.
Tom
Yeah,
should
I
have
can-
that.
Yeah. Oh. Tom, are you there?
Steve?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I had my phone on mute and I hit it the wrong way. Yeah, I'll second that motion.
And so I guess, Kelly, roll?
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Mr. Keim,
Yes.
Mr. Case.
Yes.
Motion carried.
And then the second item, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve to the IDA board the 2020 IDA single audit.
So moved, Tom.
Right.
Yeah,
I was
Menzo
second
seconds.
Menzo.
And Kelly?
Mr. Brusso,
Yes.
Mr. Keim,
Yes.
Mr. Case.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Then lastly, we have the review of the IDA long-term forecast.
Okay, so this will be a pretty brief review, but you received a copy of the long-term forecast in your packet. We have two different scenarios. So we have the worst case scenario, which is our known revenues against budget expenses. And as you can see in this forecast, the IDA will have a positive cash position through 2026 with estimated operating cash available of 120,000 and change, and then that in this scenario would switch to a negative position in 2027.
No, it's one of those golden cards.
The second scenario that you see is the IDA forecasting $400,000 annually in income, and that we obviously we remain in a positive cash position beyond 2027, with still, you know, slight decreases every year, but overall a much stronger position. Are there any questions about the specifics of these reports, these projections?
So Sarah, so the 400,000 was just essentially somewhat of an average or projected average?
Yeah, it just, based on our income every year, we fall usually between the $300,000 and $400,000 sort of average. So that's just a way of us sort of projecting, you know, more or less the status quo. So if things kind of stay how they are, here's what the future of the agency looks like.
That number has been used consistently over time.
Yeah. And
What's
yeah,
that,
just,
That particular calculation's been used consistently over time. If you go back to prior reports, you'll see it disclosed in the same manner previous years.
Yep. It just seemed we probably had more opportunities for projects and things going in past histories than we have today. Hopefully that isn't the case, but.
Yep.
just shows how dependent we are agency fees, which are year to year, certainly can't be projected out.
Yeah.
No, certainly not. And go ahead, Tom.
And I was just saying, you know, hopefully we can figure out a way to do better. But even with being up at this type of number, you know, we sit there going from $1.8 million down to basically $1 million. So we're still chewing through cash, obviously a lot better, and things, you know, we don't run out of cash. But you know, we're we're going to be struggling figuring out a way to hopefully attract something that allows us to generate some revenue, or eventually this just goes away. But hard to project.
Yeah.
There any other business for the IDA Audit Committee? Hearing none. Favorite part of the meeting? Menzo, would you like to do a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn, yes.
Tom, would you like to second that?
Certainly. Second.
So, all in favor for adjourning the IDA portion of this audit committee meetings?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So we're out of the IDA, and I was just here to switch paperwork. So we're out of the IDA audit committee meeting, and now we're starting the Seneca County Economic Development Corporation audit committee meeting. Switch paperwork. We have large piles of financial information here. First order of business is to approve the meeting minutes back from September. Can I have a motion to approve those? Menzo approves or makes a motion.
Second.
Tom? We'll just do a simple roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There's a presentation of the 2020 EDC Audit and Management Letter. So between you, John?
Okay. Next round. So, again, for the EDC, we've put together a summary. And I'll share that with you. Okay. So the executive summary, and again, just to focus a little bit on specific on the statements themselves. In this report, we have the auditor's opinion on the financial statements, which is unqualified. Again, that's the report you want. So it says that there were no material misstatements, and that you can the financials are materially stated. We also have a report on your internal controls and identified no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies there. So just to kind of hop right into here on page 1. So the EDC, there's 2 funds for the EDC, an operating fund and also the cemetery. So the EDC is managing the Sampson Memorial Cemetery, the Veterans Cemetery. Page 1 here is the combined balance sheet and income statement at the bottom for both funds. Reason I really call attention to this, and again, you've got your comparative balances, but the main thing to kind of pay attention to here is your net assets, because while the operating funds, you'll see in a minute, will show a certain net asset balance, you're really going to want to pay attention to that combined balance. So we know that the cemetery, you're anticipating turning those operations back over to the county. However, the cemetery has borrowed a significant amount of money from the EDC to help fund its operations, and the expectation right now is that those funds won't be back. So that's net asset number is something to keep in mind, and we'll talk about that again in a little bit. So page 2 here, this is your operating fund, and you've got comparative balances year to year, and the amount due from other funds. So again, this is the amounts that that have been provided over to the cemetery to help pay for their operations. It's up to $840,000 now. And if you look at the bottom, there's a little table that kind of shows you a roll up over the years of how those numbers have come together. Okay. For this year, there weren't any new projects that were closed. So the main activity this year was really the funding of the cemetery and the normal operational activities. So if we go to the next page, we can see, all right, so this is your income statement for the operating fund, comparative. Your revenues for the year are really limited to interest that you're bringing in on your bank deposits. And your operating expenses, include your consulting fees and CFO services and the audit. So you have pretty consistent fees or expenses at your. However, your major sources of revenue, and if you recall in the past, you either had fees from your projects and also rental agreements related to the Seneca Army Depot. Once that property transferred, you no longer have that income. So right now, for the past 2 years, you're really looking at more just interest income. Okay, so your net assets dropped $20,000, but again, we got to pay attention to what's going on with the cemetery. So if we go to the next page, page 4 here. So the cemetery and the activity here. So fairly consistent year to year with the activity. Again, due to other funds. So the amount that came from the operating fund to help pay for operations. And then your deficit unrestricted net assets, right, indicating that the cemetery operates at a loss and continues to do so. Okay, and your total loss this year, $82,000. And if we go to the next page, you can see the income statement for the cemetery. Okay, burial income's up a little bit. You know that the burial income, so the cemetery really only charges for dependents and spouses that are buried with the veteran. So when a veteran is buried, there's no charge to the family for that. It's only for those dependents and spouses. So you saw a little bit more income related to those this year. Okay, your expenses are pretty consistent year to year overall. Okay, that fundraising number includes a video project for about $3,000 that was also completed. Okay, but your total expenses, $105,000, outpaced your revenues by $82,000. So again, you took a loss this year for continuing to operate the cemetery. Okay. And you, in our management communication, our management letter, that's the finding. We reported a material weakness related to the losses that the cemetery continues to take. We know that you're anticipating transferring the operations back to the county. The county's supposed to take it back in June. So we know that activity is going to go away next year, but our overall net assets for the EDC, again, are $236,000, okay? So they did go down again this year related to that, but that's what you have truly available going into the next year to help with continued operations, okay? Any questions on the EDC and any of those statements?
Just one quick question, if I could. You mentioned in your opening remarks regarding the EDC that there were no material weaknesses. There is material weakness for the cemetery. And I think that should be
Yeah.
noted. All right.
Yeah, I apologize. I was referring to your internal structure. Yep.
In the comments on the schedule of findings and responses, the corporation response says management anticipates that this deficit will be reduced by future income streams. It does not anticipate being, I think you're missing I don't think that's correct. I don't think we anticipate that the deficit will be reduced by future income streams. And we're not going to be able to meet the obligation in the contract. Is that what we're saying in next year? It's page 19 if you're still looking for it.
Okay, so it's the future income streams, and we can consider that, whether that needs to be modified. I believe you are anticipating being able to meet your obligations until the end of the contract with Seneca County, but yeah, we can talk about the verbiage there.
Which page was that again?
Page 19, schedule of findings and responses. It's attached to the audited combined financial statements, supplemental information, independent audit report. Yeah, I guess I just want to be clear on what our corporation response is, because that to me it doesn't sound correct.
And
Yeah,
I think
that's a
what
good
realistic.
Because you're right, we don't anticipate future income streams. We have enough cash on hand to cover the remaining obligation. So there's no problem with meeting it, but it's not coming from additional revenue.
That would be
So realistically, we're just next year or this year at the end, writing that off because we'll never collect.
Right.
Right. It's an intercompany item.
Yeah.
So is it appropriate to change the verbiage on this page?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would concur with that.
And this, along with the sewer finally being gone, we're going to be writing off, $800,000 here, along with the asset value of the sewer on the IDA balance sheet when these are both wrapped up.
Yeah.
So the sewer piece was how much in here?
That's a 2021 event, right?
The sewer, it's still planned as a 2021 event. It would be on the IDA's balance sheet coming off. And I don't know what the amount will be off the top of my head.
It's over $1 million.
Yeah.
$1.2 million or something. And then it's the same. So between the two of these, we're going to have $2 million coming off our balance sheet, which isn't there today. I mean, neither of these are really. I've always argued the sewer shouldn't be on there anyhow. But and we have no other grants, nothing coming in from any other funding with the goals that we've done, or nothing coming in anymore for the cemetery. Is that correct, Sarah?
That's correct. So we'll plan to transfer, the cemetery at the end of June back to the county. We've been told by our council that we don't have any additional contracts or paperwork that need to be done. Our contract is specifically dated. It ends. Operations will transfer. And then at that point, the EDC will just be, still having the same, interest income from our banks. And then just sort of the professional expenses for the audits and things, as long as we're operational. But we are obviously, and we've had this conversation a few times, trying to evaluate what the future of the EDC is beyond operating the cemetery. And, part of what we've been discussing with the IDA has been the idea of developing another industrial park somewhere. And there's a fair amount of flexibility with the EDC funding. So we've thrown around the idea a little bit of, using the EDC funding to invest in a new industrial park, maybe jointly with the IDA, or, coming up with some kind of solution. So I think that there are certainly activities that we can do with the EDC. The question just becomes whether or not we want to sort of ramp things down, or whether we want to really aggressively go out and find new income streams and really kick business back up.
Does it cost us a year here to have the EDC once we're all out of this cemetery part?
About $20,000 a year, give or take.
Yeah, you're right. We should take a good discussion on it and decide. In the past, we actually did a fair amount of different things with that, and it kind of we took other things. We used to have rental income come into it from the trains and things like that. And so there was a purpose for it. And frankly, there's a lot of IDAs around that do utilize the EDC in a different way. I guess our discussion is there any viable things that we can come up with to utilize it or not? It's not unusual to have one of these, and I think there is some good, valid arguments for having it. To me, it partially, would depend upon if we can come up with some of those ideas, as well as how the IDA itself is doing. If it gets down to the point where we don't have $20,000 left to be paying out, then that kind of answers the question. If we have some potential ideas and we have some applicants on the other side that generate some revenue, I'd probably be inclined to keep it. But if we just are going downhill with both entities, then we'd have to forget about it.
Yeah, so definitely a conversation that we want to have and do more research on.
Yep.
Go ahead, Bob.
If it was dismantled at some point and you felt, or the board felt that maybe it would be advisable to recreate one, what would that cost you?
I don't know, and that's something that we would obviously want to look into prior to making a decision to, dissolve the organization. If we ever decided to change our minds in the future, what would it cost to start this up again? I mean, this is not going to be an easy decision or an overnight kind of process. This is, going to take a lot of thinking, consulting with some other agencies and what specifically they're doing with their EDCs, and figuring out, is there really demand for those types of things in our community or not, and having a really frank conversation about it. But, that's something that we definitely want to be on the agenda for this year, and something that we want to keep sort of at the forefront for everybody, as we look to the summer, is what do we do? Because obviously, we don't want to be in the business of operating cemeteries. And so beyond that, what is our role in the community?
Agreed.
more questions or discussion on the EDC audit and management letter?
Just to touch real quick on the management letter, we did mention the material weakness related to the losses. Just real quick, corrective items. So we had recommended about donations being collected by the superintendent out there and having some control over there, and you actually can implement something. Put a lockbox out there for folks to be able to make their donations securely. So, one corrected item. So that's positive, I think. But just to mention that real quick.
Oh, that's good. Thanks, John. So with that, and Menzo, even though I guess we appreciate your presence here and your input, yes, technically you're not on the EDC.
I didn't
committee,
think I was.
But we're glad to have you.
Take care.
Okay.
Have a good day.
So he adjourned himself. So
we need to change the motion to approve the minutes then. So that would have to come from both Steve and Tom, not Menzo and.
Yep.
Yes. So then, I guess, Tom, just you and me. So are you set for a motion to approve the audit and management letter to the board?
Yes. With some of the changes that we just talked about here.
Correct. With those changes, of course, those changes will be incorporated in the material that goes to the board for the March 25th meeting.
Yep.
And if for some reason we see that and we still want to make any changes, we can do that during the March 25th meeting.
Yeah.
So the motion is made by Tom and you second, Steve.
And I'll
is that
second.
correct?
Yes. I guess technically, Kelly, you can do roll.
Mr. Keim,
Yes.
Mr. Russo,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley, absent, motion carried.
So last item is the EDC long-term financial plan.
Okay, so again, this one is short. It's a little bit different than the IDAs in that for the EDC, we only do the worst case, which is our known revenues against budgeted expenses. Obviously, we have the budget for the cemetery, which was approved that ends end of June of this year. So based on that budget, our operating cash available at the end of the year would be about $170,000, and then decreasing each year by about 23 or so, because we do account for inflation here, but you'll see that we have a positive cash position through 2024 with estimated 97,000 and change of cash on hand in the EDC, and that's obviously after the cemetery has been transferred and after a few years of audits and other professional expenses.
Yes, and as we already discussed, just looking at as a long-term practice doesn't make sense just to pay 20-some thousand a year for no value, but that'll be reviewed later this year, I'm sure potentially into next year. So any questions or comments on the long-term forecast? Any other business for the EDC Audit Committee? Hearing none. Tom, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So made.
I'll second. Guess all in favor?
Aye.
So the EDC Audit Committee is adjourned. So the last item we have for today is the Seneca County Funding Corporation Audit Committee meeting, which members are Bob
Which I'm not on that one.
myself. Pardon?
I don't think I'm on that one, am I?
No, just Bob Kernan and myself.
Right.
So obviously you're welcome to stay on the line and comment if you want, Tom.
That's okay. Sarah, if you just shoot me a note, save me digging back through the old records of what do we have in the sewer fund that's out there. And have we expended any money to date for those repairs and maintenance? That was the issue.
We haven't extended any money for the repairs and maintenance yet.
Okay. So there's nothing in this balance sheet reflecting that, so because there isn't any.
No, I think when we had done our budget for the year, we had put in the budget for the phase 1 repairs for this year, which were about 45 grand. But nothing has been spent as of yet. We have to come to terms with the county still on the specifics. So there's really no money from the sewer or going to the sewer on our books. The only item would be the value of the sewer on the balance sheet,
Okay.
and that we can get to you.
Okay, that's good. The other question I wanted to clarify was on the cemetery itself. We basically have an operating agreement, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have an operating agreement here, and we've more or less honored that and operating this at a deficit, but we don't own that property. So once we're up here in June of this year, we're just done. This isn't like with the sewer where we're trying to get somebody to take it over to do anything. We're just done.
Right.
That's correct, and I'm happy that that's the case. It was confirmed by Rob Halpin to us just today, so everything will be good to go. We'll have no legal obligation there.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure of. Okay, very good. Thank you.
I guess the crazy question is if the county doesn't accept it, they have to accept it.
There's
Yeah,
no
pretty
choice.
much.
Yeah, they have to accept it. It's theirs, and so we won't be getting into another decade-long discussion of what to do with the cemetery like we have with the sewer. It'll be
I would hope that somebody in the county or anybody working the angle of trying to, get that taken over as a, official veteran cemetery or not. Or is
They
that
are.
somebody working?
They are. The state recently released the RFP for the state veteran cemetery designation. So Yale has been working with the county manager on an application. So hopefully they'll receive the first designation, but otherwise the county is aware of the obligation, and they're aware that the operation contract is expiring. They've accounted for the cemetery expenses in their budget for the second half of the year. So everything is in line to transfer smoothly at this point.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, folks. Have a good day.
Thanks,
You
Tom.
too, Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Take care, folks.
So Bob, for the funding corp, first item is approval of the audit committee meeting minutes from September.
I would so move.
I'll second. And I guess, Bob, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. That was easy. So now we have the presentation of the audit for the funding corp.
Okay, one more time.
Much simpler.
Yes, in fact, for the Funding Corp, we haven't put together a separate executive summary because there's really not so much to go through here. So, so again, with the Funding Corp, so we have a auditor's opinion. So we're issuing you a financial statement and a management letter. You have an opinion on the financial statements and an opinion on internal controls. The opinion on the financial statements is a clean opinion, unqualified, as well as the opinion on the internal controls. So we'll jump right in to page 6. This is your statement in that position, your balance sheet. And you can see year to year, very consistent, not much activity. Here, your only real activity is really paying for the audit that you're required to by the ABO to submit every year. We submit or change over to the statement of revenues and expenses. So as you know, the Funding Corporation, its main activity was to get a revenue bond issued in a project and collected its fees related to that. Since that time, you haven't really had any additional fees collected or new projects. And if we look at the income statement or the statement of changes, the net position on page 7, you can see no operating revenues from fees. Additionally, but you do see your operating expenses, which really are limited to just the cost of the audit. There were some bank fees that were also charged. So the current operations of the Funding Corp are really just kind of paying for the audits you're required to statutorily have done. And so that was the activity you had this year. So your fund balance decreased $2,800 year over year. Okay. So those are the statements. Any questions on the statements? We also issue your management letter. So we look at your internal controls. And again, we're aware that the Funding Corp has very few transactions to speak of right at this point, just with no new projects going on. However, we've talked to you in the past just about any consideration of any additional costs that there are as far as keeping up your books or administrative items for insurance and that kind of thing. And we know, man, you have considered this and made the determination not to make any separate charges at this time, but our only recommendation again is to consider that. So that is our report.
And that's not considered to be a significant deficiency, correct?
That is correct. Just a internal control item.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other comments or questions on this?
No, I have nothing.
Okay. Same here, fairly simple, straightforward. So I guess, are you ready to make a motion to approve the audit for the whole board?
I would so move.
And I'll second that. So yeah, Kelly, roll call.
Mr. Brusso,
Yes.
Mr. Kernan,
Yes.
motion carried.
So any other business? If not, certainly like to thank John and Thomas for all their work and participation here. Good explanation of all the items, so I want to thank you for that. So the only thing left is, Bob, would you like to make a motion to
I would make
adjourn?
a motion, we adjourn this meeting.
I'll second that. So all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, well, again, thank you, everyone. And again, we'll get the updated information for the whole board with the packet and the briefing memo, and should be an easy approval for next week.
And what we'll do is we'll resend draft copies with the updated language for the management letter or the response. And then we'll also resend the draft of the IDA financial statements. So Kelly and Sarah can share that with the audit committee prior to us finalizing it for the board meeting next week. Because I think, if I understand, you want to go to the board meeting with final signed versions. So we'll get the drafts back out to you to look at a completed draft with all of those changes. That way you're comfortable with them before we finalize the documents. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Great.
Okay. So with that, we're adjourned. Again, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.